And this is a very interesting game, in my opinion. I think this is one that is not going to get talked about enough because people
Mhm.
don't necessarily respect Northwestern enough, in my opinion. But I think this is a game that Northwestern has a very good shot to win this one. Northwestern at Nebraska on FanDuel. Nebraska is favored by 7.5. That line just moved earlier tonight. The over/under set at 42.5. And so this is going to be a really, really interesting game. Nebraska coming off that loss to Minnesota. They're not feeling great about themselves. Minnesota's feeling good about themselves, but they're also going up against Iowa, so that's a little bit of a tricky situation. Talked about that game already. But Northwestern, Zach, they started the season 1-2. Now they're 5-2. We talk about UCLA's 3-game win streak. What about this 4-game win streak for Northwestern right here? This is a much. I had somebody say to me on Twitter, they said, "Isn't that UCLA Indiana game a better game than Northwestern Nebraska?" And I said, "No. This is a game that Nebraska or Northwestern is more likely to win than UCLA. Northwestern is on a bigger home winning streak, or is on a bigger winning streak overall, and the offense is playing better, similar to how the UCLA offense is playing better. The defense is good, and people haven't given enough credit. So this is going to be a very interesting game. I'm curious what your question is going to be.
Yeah, my question is, can Northwestern's pass rush affect Raiola enough to pull off the upset? I think this pass rush for Northwestern is underrated. They are deep, talented. They're more talented than you realize, and they are deeper than you realize. And you look at the weakness of Nebraska's offense. I think the offensive line at times has been a major weakness and a major liability for the Cornhuskers. And what happens when Raiola doesn't have time? He tends to hold on to the ball. He tends to try to overcreate, and that makes problems for the Cornhuskers. And so I think there is a big key there. If the pass rush gets to Raiola, I think that makes it very, very challenging for Nebraska to move the ball and to make plays offensively.
Yeah, I mean, Northwestern has not had the most sacks this season, but they have got a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Just their edge players overall, they've gotten over 50 pressures this season. They have five different players with six or more pressures on the year. Kilbane, he was one that we hadn't even talked about going into the season, but
Mhm.
he's been a really good pass rusher for this team. Aiden Hubbard has done his part. Antosaka has been, maybe you could say a bit of a disappointment compared to what we were kind of saying about him, but I don't want to say that because they have other players on this team. So I'm trying not to look at the individual player. I'm just trying to look at the team overall. And the team has done a good job of getting after the passer. They only have 11 sacks on the season so far. Minnesota got 9 last game on their own. So, that's, that's interesting to think about. Northwestern going into this one with only 11 on the season. But I think this is going to be a really, really important game. This isn't my question, but I had a question similar to yours, and I actually changed mine because I didn't want us to pretty much ask the same question. But Zach, to me, it is imperative that Nebraska goes to their wide receivers more often in this game. They have when Dylan Raiola is hot or when Dylan Raiola has pressure in his face, he is dumping it off to the linebacker and the tight end and the running backs a lot. It's not Drew Aller territory, Zach, but it's honestly kind of getting close to that a little bit. I'm not, Nebraska fans don't come after me. I'm not saying he's Drew Aller, but there have been games this season where it kind of has been Drew Aller esque. Zach, Isaiah Hunter has 14 receptions in the last 3 games. That's good. He's doing a good job. But Ja'Cory Barney and Dane Key, these are two guys that were expected to be star wide receivers for this team.
Mhm.
They only have 10 the past 2 games. Dane Key had 4 targets and 0 receptions against Michigan State and Minnesota. I
That's not
think you
good
have
enough.
it's not good enough. I think you have to, and I don't even know if it's Dane Key as much as it's Dana Holgerson not getting the ball to his playmakers, right? Emmitt Johnson has been a fantastic playmaker for you, but he's not necessarily been the playmaker catching the ball. He's been more the playmaker running the ball. He leads the Big Ten in rushing so far this season, but if they want to fix these sack issues, they have to get the ball out to their wide receivers more often. We're talking slants, we're talking out routes, things like that, to get the ball out in space so those guys can make it work. The 2 losses this season, Michigan and Minnesota, who were the 2 most targeted players in those 2 games? Do you know, Zach?
Oh. I'm gonna guess Hunter is one.
Hunter is up there. He is top three. Yes. Um, he's second.
Oh gosh, who's the? Is it Lindenmeyer? Is the tight end?
Lindemeyer.
Yeah, Lindenmeyer.
Those two games, both Lindemeyer and Emmitt Johnson were two of the top three most targeted players. In the Michigan game, Lindemeyer and Johnson were the two most targeted players on the team. Um, to me, it's just not good enough. You have
Yep.
to be able to get the ball to your wide receivers. Wide receivers, Daniel Holgerson, he was talking about communication this week with it, so maybe that's a big aspect of something they need to work on. But overall, reactions from that, Zach, and then I'll get into my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something wrong with the offense, and I think that it's something that Billy Tuesday, our good friend, mentioned this in the chat. It seemed like Holgerson was turning their offense around. I guess not. I think that
Well,
it's
I do want to say I think it's been turned around overall in the season, but when it's
yeah,
not been turned around, that's when they've lost. And it's kind of
yeah,
what we thought going into the season, right? Is that if the offense doesn't play well, they're not going to win games, in my opinion.
yep, yep. And I think it's putting pressure on Raiola to find ways to create with his wide receivers, and that requires more time, and that means more sacks.
Right, right. And so, in my opinion, they have to figure out a way to get the ball out to those receivers and let them make plays because as much as great as Tyler Warren was, and he was great, your tight ends are just not playmakers typically. You can't just get the ball to Lindenmeyer. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. My question on this one is: will the combination of Caleb Komalafe and Joseph Hyman outplay Emmitt Johnson? And you might think, JR, no way that's going to happen. Well, we got some stuff for you. Okay, hear me out. Okay, Emmitt Johnson, yes, he's the leading rusher in the Big Ten, no doubt. But both Komalafe and Hyman are top 10 in Big Ten each, are top 10 in yards after contact. In my opinion, they are the third best running back duo in all of the Big Ten right now. You have Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders, and then when Eli Sanders got hurt, you had King Miller. Wayman Jordan got hurt. So if you want to take them out of it, I think Northwestern has probably the second best running back duo in the Big Ten right now, at least the way they've performed. Maybe they're not the most talented, but at least the production that they give you, they are the second best right now, in my opinion, followed only behind Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall from Michigan. Emmitt Johnson has 352 yards after contact. Komalafe has 344. Joseph Hyman has 291. An
Mm,
overrated part or an underrated part of that Minnesota win over Nebraska because everybody talks about the 9 sacks. And I talked about it too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a big thing you need to talk about. But Minnesota, Darius Taylor, he rushed for 148 yards in that game. Zach, do you know how many yards Darius Taylor had on the season going into that game before?
I think it was less than that, wasn't it?
It was 205. He
Oof.
had multiple games with less than 30 yards rushing. He
Yep.
had over 100 yards in that very first game of the season against Buffalo, but he had multiple games with less than 30 yards rushing. He hadn't played every single game, so going into that one, he only had 205 yards rushing. He had 148 rushing yards. It was
Mm,
Minnesota's first game as a team with 100 plus rushing yards in a Big Ten game this year.
wow.
Northwestern has had 200 or more rushing yards 3 times this season. And that doesn't even include UCLA when they had 199 rushing yards against them.
Mm,
So one more, and I could say four over half the time, but we had to probably have like one yard that wasn't counted that should have been or something. So,
yep.
but
There you go.
ruined the stat for me here. But all this to say, Northwestern has a legit rushing attack,
Yep.
and if Nebraska's not careful, they're going to get run all over again, just like they did against Minnesota.
Yeah.
And Preston Stone, I don't think he's going to be the one to beat you, but this running back duo that is one of the better ones in the Big Ten, that is pretty underrated. It's kind of like the underrated Rutgers receivers, in my opinion. They're going to get you if you're not careful.
Yep. And Preston Stone's been better
He
as
has
of
been.
late.
Yeah, he's not been moving the ball necessarily super great, but he's not been turning it over, which that's kind
Yep.
of all you can ask for when you have a really good rushing attack, right?
Yep. Yep. And they have a receiver in Wildy that's
I like
good
Weldy a
enough.
lot.
He's
Yeah,
yeah, he's a smart, ironically, a smart, good player.
they're all smart there, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Zach, what is your score prediction? We've been talking Northwestern up in this one. What is your,
I
really fast. Steely Matt reposted the stream. Thank you for doing that, Steely Matt. Want to always acknowledge that when people do that on X/Twitter. So if you do that, please let me know. All right. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I changed my pick. I was gonna go Nebraska, and then I listen. I think David Braun knows what he's doing. I last year was setback. Tough roster, tough schedule, but he is a darn good football coach, and that's nothing against Matt Rule, but I don't love the matchup for Nebraska. Like I really do think this pass rush is going to affect Raiola, and I think the running attack is going to be a problem. And I think Preston Stone will have enough to be able to do a little bit of play action that's going to keep Nebraska defensively just a hair off balance. I like Northwestern in this one 21-17.
So you're not buying what Matt Rule said about the players took Minnesota for granted?
No.
Hmm.
I don't, and I don't love that he came out and said that,
Yeah,
if I'm
I didn't
honest,
love it either.
because it's an excuse. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if we had just played our A game, it's like, well, then play your freaking A game.
Yeah, you lost by nearly three touchdowns, dude.
Yeah. Don't that's
Minnesota beat you.
but
Accept it.
by the way, that's part of the reason why I don't think Penn State should hire Rule. If you're like,
I Yeah, I mean it definitely annoyed me too. I'm falling for the alumni stuff right now. Man, that's my thing. I'm falling for like all the
don't do
alumni
it.
head coaches that are doing a good
Don't
job.
do it. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry.
I'm falling for
You
it. I
can
know I
you
am. But
you can do what you want, but
so call me crazy. I am doing my best to not overreact to weeks anymore, Zach. I'm not very good at it because I do overreact a lot, as evidence of me just saying Northwestern has the second best running duo in the Big Ten. So somebody's gonna probably fight me on that at some point. They're probably gonna clip it or something. That's fine if you do that, whatever. But I Nebraska at home. They've been good at home this season. I know they lost to Michigan, but I think Michigan had their number, and Michigan under Biff Poggi is different than under Sharon Moore. So, maybe that's what it is. But I, uh, I'm gonna pick Nebraska to win this one. Low scoring game. I have Nebraska winning this one, 17-14, and Nebraska fans give a huge sigh of relief at the end
mhm.
and say, "Holy cow, we may have to fire Matt Rule if we lose to Northwestern."
Yeah. Winner is bowl eligible, by the way.
There you go. And
So
hey,
this is for bowl.
even though Nebraska's 5-2, don't take that away from them. That would be another huge accomplishment for them to go back to back bowl games.
Yep. Yep.
So, all right,